The lamp is already burning on the kitchen table when you step into the hall. 5:30 in the morning, November 1885, and the house above you is still asleep. You can hear it in the silence, that particular quality of stillness that only exists when everyone who matters is unconscious. Your shoes make no sound on the flagstones. You learned that your first week here, heel first, then toe, weight distributed carefully, never let the leather squeak, never let your breathing be loud enough to carry up the back stairs. You are a housemaid in a prosperous London townhouse, and your entire existence depends on one fundamental principle: you must never be seen. Not by the family, not by their guests, not by anyone who lives in the world above the green baize door that separates the servants' quarters from the family rooms. You are here to make the house run smoothly, to keep fires burning and floors clean and meals appearing at precisely the right temperature at precisely the right time. But you're here to do all of this invisibly, as if the house itself were enchanted, as if comfort and order materialized out of thin air without human labor. The architecture of this house was designed specifically to hide you. Right now, as you move through the basement corridor toward the scullery, you're walking through a network of passages that the family upstairs will never see, will never even think about. There are 2 staircases in this building. The main staircase, wide and carpeted, curves gracefully from the entrance hall up 3 floors. You will never use it. Your staircase is narrow, uncarpeted, tucked behind walls, rising from the basement kitchen to the attics in a steep vertical shaft that allows servants to move between floors without ever entering the family's sight lines. There are 2 front doors. The main entrance, with its brass knocker and painted panels, opens onto the street where carriages pull up and visiting cards are presented. You will never use that door either. Your entrance is down a flight of stone steps below street level, opening into the basement area where deliveries arrive and where you and the other servants slip in and out like shadows. Even the rooms themselves are doubled. The family has a drawing room on the first floor, all silk wallpaper and oil paintings. Below it, directly underneath, is the servants' hall, where you and the other maids and the footmen eat your meals at a long wooden table. The family has bedrooms with 4-poster beds and velvet curtains. You have a narrow iron bedstead in an attic room you share with 2 other housemaids, cold in winter, stifling in summer, with a skylight instead of a proper window. The house is a vertical world, stratified like geological layers, family at the top, servants at the bottom, and an entire system of rules and architecture designed to keep those layers from ever mixing. You light the range first. This is always the first task because everything else depends on it. The kitchen range is a massive cast iron beast that dominates one wall of the kitchen, and it must be burning hot before the cook arrives at 6:30 to begin breakfast preparations. You rake out yesterday's ashes into the ash bucket, quietly, always quietly, and lay fresh kindling in the grate. Paper first, then the smallest twigs, then slightly larger pieces of wood, building a structure that will catch and hold flame. The match flares in the darkness. You touch it to the paper and watch the fire take hold, feeding it carefully, adding coal once the wood is burning steadily. The range drinks heat and fuel constantly, and part of your job is making sure it never goes out completely, never cools enough to require relighting from scratch, which would throw off the entire day's cooking schedule. While the range heats, you move through the other morning tasks with practiced efficiency. Fill the kettle from the scullery tap, set it on the range to boil, lay the fires in the family rooms upstairs, drawing room, dining room, morning room, the master's study, carrying coal up the back stairs in a heavy scuttle, trying not to let the pieces clink against each other, trying not to let coal dust drift onto the carpets. You have to finish all of this before the family wakes, before they come downstairs for breakfast at 8:30. By then the fires must be burning cheerfully in every room they might enter. The lamps must be trimmed and filled. The grates must be cleaned of yesterday's ashes. The brass fenders must be polished. The carpets must show the neat diagonal lines of fresh sweeping. And you must be gone, vanished back to the servants' quarters, invisible again. There is a particular skill to this vanishing act that took you months to learn. It is not enough to simply leave the room before the family arrives. You must leave no trace of yourself, no smudge of coal dust on the hearth tiles, no impression of your knees on the hearthrug, no smell of the black lead polish you used to shine the grate. The room must look as if it has always been this way, as if cleanliness and warmth and order are its natural state rather than the result of your labour. The housekeeper, Mrs. Davison, explained this to you on your first day. She's a tall woman with grey hair pulled back severely under her cap, and she runs this household with military precision. The family pays us to maintain their comfort, she said, her voice low and firm. They do not pay us to be seen doing it. A good servant is invisible. She anticipates needs before they are expressed. She solves problems before they become noticeable. She completes her tasks and disappears. Invisible. That word has stayed with you. It is not the same as hidden, exactly. Hidden implies that you are there but concealed, that you could be discovered. Invisible means you are so thoroughly integrated into the household's functioning that your presence does not register as presence at all. You are like air, like gravity, necessary but unnoticed. The rules that govern your invisibility are extensive and specific. If you encounter a member of the family in a corridor, you must turn and face the wall until they pass. Not just step aside, actually turn your body toward the wall, eyes down, hands folded, becoming as close to a piece of furniture as a living person can be. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not make eye contact. You do not acknowledge the family's private conversations even when you cannot help but overhear them. When you enter a room to clean it or tend the fire, you knock softly and wait for permission before opening the door. If the room is occupied, you move as quietly as possible, keeping your eyes on your work, speaking only if absolutely necessary. If a family member enters while you are working, you immediately stop what you're doing, drop a small curtsy, and prepare to leave unless instructed otherwise. Your presence in their space is always conditional, always subject to revocation. There are certain rooms you enter only at specific times. The drawing room must be cleaned in the morning, before the ladies of the house come down. The dining room must be cleaned after breakfast is cleared, but before luncheon. Bedrooms are attended while the family is downstairs having breakfast. Never before, when they might still be in bed, and never after, when they might return to their rooms during the day. The master's study is cleaned only when he is out of the house, because he has valuable papers on his desk and does not want anyone disturbing them. The mistress's dressing room is attended by her lady's maid, not by you, because it contains jewellery and personal items too valuable to be handled by a junior housemaid. Every room has its own schedule, its own rules, its own requirements. And you must know all of them, must internalise them until they become instinct, must never make the mistake of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The back stairs are where you spend much of your day. Narrow and steep, uncarpeted and unheated, they connect the basement kitchen to every floor of the house, without ever intersecting with the family's main staircase. These stairs are yours. They are where you carry coal scuttles and ash buckets, where you haul hot water in heavy cans, where you transport dirty laundry down and clean laundry up, where you move invisibly through the vertical geography of the house. The stairs smell of wood and coal dust, and the faint mustiness of spaces that never see sunlight. They are dim even during the day, lit only by small windows at each landing, and at night you climb them by feel, your hand finding the railing automatically in the darkness. You have climbed these stairs so many times that your legs know the rhythm of them, the number of steps between each floor, the worn patch on the 7th step from the bottom where generations of servants have stepped, the slight unevenness of the landing on the 2nd floor. Sometimes you pass other servants on the back stairs, Mary the scullery maid struggling up from the basement with a bucket of hot water for someone's morning wash, Thomas the footman coming down after bringing the master his hot shaving water, Annie the upper housemaid carrying fresh linens up to the bedrooms. You nod to each other silently, pressing against the wall to let each other pass, but you do not stop to talk. There is no time, and besides, sound carries up these stairs in unexpected ways. A conversation in the stairwell might be heard through a bedroom door. A laugh might echo into the drawing room. Even here, in your own passages, you must be quiet. The backstairs have their own sounds, though. The creak of weight on old wood, the shuffle of feet on worn treads, the faint wheeze of your own breathing after climbing 4 flights carrying something heavy, the distant hiss of the range below, and the occasional clank of pipes in the walls. These are the sounds of the house's hidden circulatory system, the movements of people and heat and water through spaces the family never sees. By 7 o'clock you have finished laying all the fires and are back in the kitchen, helping the cook prepare breakfast. Mrs. Turner, the cook, is a stout woman with red cheeks and capable hands, and she runs her kitchen with absolute authority. This is her domain. You're here to assist her, to do the tasks she assigns, to stay out of her way when she is concentrating on something delicate. This morning breakfast will be simple because it is a weekday and there are no guests staying in the house. Bacon, eggs, toast, tea. The same breakfast served at the same time every morning, with variations so minor that they barely register. On Sundays, there might be kippers or kedgeree. On special occasions, there might be kidneys or chops. But for the most part, breakfast is predictable, which makes it manageable. You slice bread for toasting, careful to make the slices even and not too thick. You set the bacon to cook in a large iron skillet while Mrs. Turner beats eggs in a bowl. You butter the toast as it comes off the range, arranging the slices in the silver toast rack that will go upstairs to the dining room. You fill the teapot with boiling water to warm it, then empty it and add fresh tea leaves, then boiling water again, timing it precisely so the tea will be ready when Thomas carries the breakfast tray upstairs. The kitchen is warm now, heated by the range and by the activity of cooking. The smell of bacon fills the air, mixing with the yeasty smell of bread and the particular metallic mineral smell of cast iron heated to cooking temperature. Mrs. Turner moves efficiently between stove and table, cracking eggs into the pan, turning bacon with a long fork, tasting the tea to check its strength. At exactly 8:30, Thomas appears in the kitchen doorway. He's dressed in his morning livery, dark coat, striped waistcoat, white gloves, and he carries the large silver tray that will hold the family's breakfast. Without a word, Mrs. Turner begins loading the tray. Covered dishes for the bacon and eggs, the toast rack, the teapot, sugar bowl, milk jug, all matching silver. Thomas lifts the loaded tray, it must weigh 30 pounds, and heads for the back stairs. This is the moment of transition. The food passes from the servant's world into the family's world, carried up through the vertical shaft of the back stairs, across the threshold of the green baize door that separates the two realms, into the dining room where the family is gathering for their morning meal. In a few minutes, they will be eating food that you helped prepare, sitting in a room that you cleaned and warmed, using dishes that you will later wash. But they will never see you. They will never think about the hands that made their comfort possible. You will not see the family eat their breakfast. That is not your place. Instead, you eat your own breakfast in the servants' hall, a meal of bread and butter and tea taken standing at the kitchen table, because there is too much work to do to sit down properly. The servants eat later than the family and we eat simpler food, whatever is left from the family's meals, supplemented with bread and cheese and occasional scraps. It is understood that the best food goes upstairs. That is how the household works. After breakfast, after the family's dishes are cleared and brought back downstairs to be washed, the real work of the day begins. Cleaning. Endless, relentless cleaning. Room after room, floor after floor, every surface scrubbed or dusted or polished or swept, according to a schedule that Mrs. Davison maintains in her head and enforces with quiet certainty. Mondays are for the drawing room, thorough cleaning, every piece of furniture moved and the carpet underneath swept, every ornament dusted, every mirror and window polished. Tuesdays are for the dining room, Wednesdays for the morning room, Thursdays for the master's study, Fridays for the bedrooms with fresh linens on all the beds and every floor swept and washed, Saturdays for the attics and the servants' quarters, which are cleaned less thoroughly because no one important will see them, but still cleaned because Mrs. Davison insists on standards. The cleaning is done according to strict methods that Mrs. Davison taught you. You do not simply wipe a surface and call it clean. You remove every object from the surface first, dusting each one individually. You wipe the surface itself with a damp cloth, checking for any stickiness or staining. You polish any wood with beeswax. You replace the objects in their exact previous positions. Mrs. Davison will notice if a candlestick is moved 3 inches to the left, and she will not be pleased. Carpets are swept with damp tea leaves scattered on them first, which keeps the dust from rising into the air. Brass is polished with a special paste until it gleams. Silver is polished with a different paste, using gentle circular motions. Mirrors are cleaned with vinegar and old newspaper, buffed until there are no streaks. Coal grates are blackened with black lead polish, applied with a brush, and then buffed with a soft cloth until the iron has a soft sheen. Every task has its proper method, its proper tools, its proper timing, and every task must be completed without leaving any trace of yourself. No fingerprints on the polished brass, no footprints on the swept carpet, No smell of vinegar lingering in the air after you clean the mirrors. You must work thoroughly but invisibly, leaving only cleanliness behind. The afternoon brings different tasks, mending perhaps, if there is any household linen that needs repair, preparing vegetables for dinner if the cook needs assistance, running errands to the shops if supplies are needed, though this is more often done by the kitchen maid or the boot boy, since a housemaid's time is usually too valuable to spare for errands. If you enjoyed listening to sleep stories like this, subscribe. I post stories like this weekly. Sometimes there are special tasks. Silver that needs to be cleaned before a dinner party. Extra rooms that need to be prepared for guests. Seasonal work like beating carpets in the spring or putting up preserves in the autumn. The work never ends, really. There is always something that needs doing. Always another room that needs attention. Always another surface that needs to be cleaned or polished or swept. And through it all, you must remain invisible. Must complete your work without being seen, without being heard, without leaving any evidence of your presence beyond the cleanliness and order you create. The family lives in their world of drawing rooms and calling cards and dinner parties, and you live in your world of backstairs and basement passages and attic bedrooms, and the two worlds must never visibly intersect. This is what it means to be in service. This is what it means to be a Victorian servant. Your labour makes everything possible, but your labour must never be acknowledged. Your presence is essential, but your presence must never be noticed. You are the invisible hands that maintain the visible perfection of upper-class life. And this is your world, the world behind the green baize door, the world of backstairs and early mornings and coal dust under your fingernails, the world that keeps the other world running smoothly, the world that no one is supposed to see. The architecture tells you everything you need to know about your place in this house. It is written in stone and brick and the careful arrangement of doors and hallways. The family's rooms face the street, with tall windows that let in natural light and elegant proportions that suggest refinement and taste. Your rooms face inward, toward the interior courtyard or the back alley, with small windows that let in minimal light and cramped proportions that suggest nothing except utility. The basement, where you're standing now at the kitchen table, is a world unto itself. The ceiling is lower down here, barely 7 feet in places with exposed beams that you have learned to duck around instinctively. The walls are brick, painted white in a futile attempt to make the space seem brighter, though the paint has yellowed with age and smoke. The floor is flagstone, uneven in places where the stones have settled differently over the years, and cold even in summer, requiring you to wear sturdy shoes at all times. The basement contains the kitchen, of course, the largest room down here, dominated by the massive range and surrounded by work tables and shelves and hooks, where pots and pans hang within easy reach. But it also contains the scullery, where the heavy work of washing dishes and pots happens in large stone sinks filled with water heated on the range. The larder, with its slate shelves and cool temperature, where perishable food is stored. The wine cellar, though you're not allowed in there. That is Thomas's domain, and the door is kept locked. The servants' hall, where you take your meals at a long wooden table, and the housekeeper's room, where Mrs. Davison keeps her accounts and her stores of household supplies and where she interviews new servants and dispenses discipline when necessary. Each of these rooms is connected by narrow passages that form a kind of underground network. You can move from kitchen to scullery to larder to servants' hall without going upstairs, without entering the family's sightlines. The basement is self-contained, designed to allow the servants to do most of their work without ever needing to surface into the upper world. The ceiling of the basement is the floor of the house proper, the ground floor where the main entrance hall and the morning room and the dining room are located. If you stand very still in the kitchen and listen, you can sometimes hear footsteps from the rooms above, the heavy tread of the master as he crosses the entrance hall, the lighter, quicker steps of the mistress as she moves from the dining room to the morning room after breakfast. The patter of the children's feet as they run through the hall, though this is usually followed by the governess's sharp voice telling them to walk, not run. Young ladies and gentlemen do not run indoors. These sounds are your only direct connection to the life happening above you. You do not see the family unless you are in their rooms doing your work. You do not speak to them except when answering a direct question. You do not know what they talk about at meals or what letters they receive or what social engagements they have planned. But you hear their footsteps. You hear doors opening and closing. You hear voices, though usually not clearly enough to make out words. You hear the life of the household as a kind of distant symphony played on the floorboards above your head. The back stairs, your staircase, begins in a corner of the basement and rises vertically through the entire house. On the ground floor, it opens onto a small landing near the morning room. On the first floor, it opens near the master and mistress's bedrooms. On the second floor, near the guest bedrooms and the nursery. On the third floor, near the children's rooms and the schoolroom. And finally, at the very top, it opens onto the attic corridor where the servants' bedrooms are located. At each floor, the back stairs are separated from the main part of the house by a door. These doors are important. They mark the boundary between the servants' passages and the family's rooms. When you pass through one of these doors, you pass from your world into theirs, and you must be ready to become invisible the moment you do. The doors are usually left ajar during the day to allow for easier passage, but they can be closed and even locked if necessary. They are painted the same colour as the walls around them, a kind of institutional green on the servants' side, blending into whatever colour scheme exists on the family's side, so that they almost disappear when closed. This is intentional. Even the doors are designed to be inconspicuous, to suggest that the passages behind them do not exist. On the family side of these doors, everything is different. The hallways are wider, the ceilings higher, the floors are carpeted in rich patterns. The walls are covered with wallpaper or painted in fashionable colours, sage green in the drawing room, deep red in the dining room, soft blue in the morning room. There are paintings on the walls, landscapes mostly, and the occasional portrait of a respected ancestor. There are tables with vases of fresh flowers, changed every few days. There are mirrors in gilded frames. There are gas lamps with etched glass shades that cast a warm, even light. This is the world the family inhabits. This is what visitors see when they come calling. This is the face the house presents to the world. Elegant, comfortable, prosperous, refined. And all of it depends on the hidden world below and behind, the world of backstairs and basement passages where you and the other servants labour invisibly to maintain the visible perfection above. The separation is not just physical. It is social, economic, moral. The family is educated, cultured, leisured. The servants are working class, unschooled beyond basic literacy, labouring from dawn until late evening. The family's time is their own, to spend on reading or music or social calls or whatever diversions they choose. Your time belongs to the household, structured down to the hour by the day's work schedule. The family eats meals designed to please their palates, multiple courses, rich sauces, expensive ingredients. You eat to fuel your body for work, simple food, plain food, whatever is left over or cheapest. The family sleeps in comfortable beds with feather mattresses and linen sheets. You sleep on a narrow iron bedstead with a horsehair mattress and rough cotton sheets. The family bathes in hot water, carried up to their rooms and poured into hip baths. You wash at a basin in your attic room, using cold water more often than not, because heating water for servants' baths is considered an unnecessary expense. Every aspect of the household's design reinforces these separations. The family has a water closet on the first floor, a modern convenience that many houses in London still lack. You have a shared privy in the basement, a cold, uncomfortable space that you try to avoid using as much as possible. The family has a drawing room and a morning room and a dining room and a library, separate spaces for different activities and moods. You have the servants' hall, one room that serves as dining room, sitting room and social space. Even your clothing marks the separation. The family wears fashionable dress, the women in elaborate gowns with bustles and trim, the master in well-tailored suits. You wear a uniform, a plain dark dress, a white apron, a white cap, that identifies you as a servant and removes any possibility of individuality or personal expression. Your uniform is practical, designed for work, and it is the same every day. You own two of them, washing one while wearing the other, and they are the only dresses you possess. The uniform serves multiple purposes. It identifies your role in the household, so that visitors know immediately who you are and how to interact with you, or rather, how not to interact with you, since most visitors simply ignore servants altogether. It removes any ambiguity about your status. It makes you part of a collective, the servants, rather than an individual person with preferences and personality. And it reinforces the idea that you are here to work, not to display yourself, not to be looked at, not to matter as a person. Mrs. Davison is extremely strict about the uniform. It must be clean, though not spotless. She understands that you will get it dirty during the course of your work. It must be neat, with no torn seams or missing buttons. It must fit properly, not too tight and not too loose. And it must be worn correctly, with the apron tied just so and the cap pinned securely to your hair. She inspects you each morning before you begin work, checking these details, and she does not hesitate to send you back to your room to correct any deficiency. Appearance matters, she told you once, when you protested that a small stain on your apron would not be visible to anyone. Not because anyone will see you. If you're doing your job properly, they will not. But because maintaining standards is how we maintain our dignity. You may be a servant, but you are a servant in a respectable household. Act accordingly. Dignity. That word surprised you. You had not thought that servants were supposed to have dignity. But Mrs. Davison believes in it fiercely. She believes that good work done well is its own form of pride. She believes that even at the bottom of the social hierarchy, you can maintain your self-respect by maintaining standards. She believes that invisibility does not mean worthlessness. And so you keep your uniform clean. You arrive for work each morning with your cap pinned straight and your apron ironed. You conduct yourself with as much dignity as a person can have while carrying a coal scuttle up 4 flights of back stairs. You do your work thoroughly and well because Mrs. Davison taught you that this is how you honour yourself, even when no one else will honour you. The front of the house and the back of the house are like parallel universes, occupying the same physical space but somehow never intersecting. The family lives in the front, moving through bright rooms with high ceilings and large windows, their days structured by social obligations and personal preferences. You live in the back, moving through dim passages and cramped rooms, your days structured by work that must be completed regardless of your own preferences. And yet these two universes are utterly dependent on each other. The family's world cannot exist without your labour. The comfort they take for granted, the warm rooms, the clean floors, the meals that appear at regular intervals, is made possible by your invisible work. They think they live in a naturally orderly world, but you know the truth. Order is created, maintained, sustained by constant effort. Sometimes you wonder if they ever think about this, if the mistress sitting in her drawing room working on her embroidery ever considers who scrubbed the floor she's sitting on, if the master reading his newspaper by the fire ever thinks about who carried the coal that feeds that fire, if the children playing with their toys in the nursery ever wonder who cleaned those toys and put them away last night after they went to bed. You suspect they do not. That is the point of invisibility after all. You have succeeded in your role when they do not think about you, when the machinery of the household runs so smoothly that they are never confronted with evidence of the labour that makes it run. Your invisibility is their comfort. And most of the time you accept this. This is the world you were born into, this is how things work. You are in service because your family needed the income, and because this is the work available to young women of your class. You could have worked in a factory or a shop, but domestic service was considered more respectable. You could have stayed in your village and done agricultural work, but there was no future in that, and besides, your mother wanted you to see London, to have opportunities she never had. So you came here. You learned the rules, you learned to be invisible, you learned to find satisfaction in work well done, even when that work goes unnoticed. You learn to create your own small world in the cracks and margins of the household. Friendships with the other servants, quiet moments in your attic room before sleep, the rare afternoon off when you can walk through the park or visit a market. This is your life now. The backstairs and the basement passages, the early mornings and the late evenings, the constant awareness of where you are and where you're not allowed to be, the careful navigation of physical and social boundaries that keep you in your place. But the architecture tells you something else too if you pay attention. It tells you that your labour is essential, that the whole elaborate structure of this household depends on the work you do, that without the back stairs, without the basement passages, without the servants moving invisibly through the house's hidden circulation system, the front of the house could not function. You are invisible, yes, but you're also necessary. And sometimes, in the early morning darkness of the kitchen, standing at the range waiting for the kettle to boil, you allow yourself to feel the strange power of that necessity. The house above you is still sleeping, but you are awake, you are working, and without you none of this would be possible. The morning passes in its familiar pattern. By 9 o'clock, the breakfast dishes are washed and put away, and you are upstairs in the drawing room working your way methodically through the day's cleaning tasks. This is a large room, perhaps 20 feet by 30, with 2 tall windows overlooking the street, a marble fireplace, and enough furniture to require careful navigation. Several upholstered chairs, 2 small tables, a larger table near the window where the mistress does her correspondence, a settee, and a display cabinet containing porcelain figurines. You begin by opening the window slightly, even though it is cold outside because the room needs airing. The smell of yesterday's fire lingers in the air, along with the faint mustiness that accumulates in any room that has been closed up overnight. Fresh air will clear this, though you will close the windows again before you finish, because the room must be warm when the mistress comes in after luncheon. Next, you remove all the small objects from the tables and the mantelpiece. Candlesticks, a small clock, a vase that currently holds dried flowers, several leather-bound books, a porcelain box that holds calling cards. You do not just lift these objects and dust underneath them. You dust each object individually, carefully, checking for any smudge or fingerprint, using a soft cloth that will not scratch delicate surfaces. Then you set them aside on the sheet you have spread on the settee. You never put dirty objects back on a clean surface, and turn your attention to the surfaces themselves. The tables are dark wood, polished to a high shine. You wipe them with a barely damp cloth first, removing any dust or sticky residue. Then you apply a small amount of beeswax polish, rubbing it in with circular motions, working with the grain of the wood. The wax gives the wood a warm glow and a faint honey smell. You buff it with a clean dry cloth until the surface is smooth and gleaming, and your own face looks back at you, distorted but recognizable, in the polished wood. The mantelpiece requires more care because it is marble, which scratches easily. You use only water on a soft cloth, no abrasives, no harsh cleaners. You pay special attention to the area around the clock, where dust tends to accumulate in the decorative carving. Once the surfaces are clean and polished, you replace the objects one by one in their exact previous positions. This is not guesswork. Before you removed them, you noted mentally where each item sat. The candlestick 6 inches from the left edge of the mantelpiece, the clock centered exactly, the vase on the right side balanced visually with the candlestick on the left. Mrs. Davison has trained you to notice these placements, and she will notice if anything is moved. The mistress might not notice consciously, but she would sense that something was wrong, that the room looked slightly off, and that would reflect poorly on you. The carpet requires different treatment. This is a good carpet, probably Turkish or Persian, with an intricate pattern in reds and blues and golds. It is too valuable to beat outside. That is done only during spring cleaning, so instead you sweep it carefully with a soft brush, working in the direction of the pile. But first you scatter damp tea leaves across the surface. This is an old technique that you learned in your first week of service. The dampness in the tea leaves catches the dust and keeps it from rising into the air as you sweep. Otherwise, you would simply be redistributing the dust from the carpet to the furniture. You sweep slowly, methodically, in neat rows that overlap slightly to ensure you miss nothing. The tea leaves darken as they collect dust, showing you where the carpet was dirtiest. You sweep these soiled tea leaves into a dustpan and dispose of them, then scatter fresh ones and continue. It takes nearly 20 minutes to sweep this one carpet properly. While you work, you're listening, always listening. For footsteps in the corridor, for the sound of the front door opening and closing, which would indicate that someone has arrived or departed, for voices that might signal that a family member is approaching. If you hear any of these sounds, you must be prepared to stop what you're doing immediately, gather your cleaning supplies, and disappear through the servant's door before you're seen. This has happened to you before. You were polishing the brass fender in the morning room when you heard the mistress's voice in the hallway, closer than you expected. You barely had time to grab your cleaning box and slip out the servant's door, pulling it shut behind you before she entered. You stood on the other side of that door in the narrow passage, your heart pounding, waiting to hear if she would notice anything amiss. But she did not. The room looked perfect, because you had nearly finished your work, and she settled in her chair by the window and rang for tea without ever knowing you had been there moments before. That is the skill Mrs. Davison values most, the ability to vanish at a moment's notice, leaving no trace of your presence except the work you have completed. Today, though, you are lucky. No one comes. You finish the carpet, then move to the upholstered furniture. The chairs and settee are covered in a deep blue fabric. Silk damask, you think, though you're not certain of these things, and they must be brushed carefully with a special soft brush to remove dust without damaging the fabric. You brush in long, smooth strokes, following the direction of the fabric's weave. The windows are next. You remove the dried flowers from the vase on the table near the window. They are brittle and dusty, and the mistress has clearly tired of them, and set the vase aside to be refilled with fresh flowers later. Then you turn your attention to the glass. Window cleaning is tedious work, but also oddly satisfying. You mix vinegar with water in a bucket, dip your cloth, wring it out thoroughly, too much liquid will streak, and wipe the glass in long vertical strokes, then horizontal ones, creating a crosshatch pattern that ensures you cover every inch. Then you dry the glass with crumpled newspaper, which Mrs. Davison swears by for streak-free shine. The newspaper makes a squeaking sound against the glass, and your arm aches from the repetitive motion, but slowly the windows become transparent, clean, letting in the grey November light. Through the clean windows you can see the street outside. It is mid-morning now, and there is activity. A delivery cart pulled by a tired-looking horse, its driver calling out to someone you cannot see. A lady in a dark coat and hat walking past with a maid following a respectful distance behind, carrying packages. Two gentlemen in conversation on the corner, a street sweeper pushing his broom along the pavement, clearing the horse dung and debris into the gutter. This is a respectable neighbourhood, not the wealthiest part of London, but prosperous, middle to upper middle class, the homes of successful merchants and professionals and minor gentry. The houses on this street are all similar to the one you're standing in. Narrow townhouses built of brick, 4 or 5 stories tall with basements for servants and attics for storage or additional servants' bedrooms. They all have the same basic layout. Main entrance on the ground floor, reception rooms on the ground and first floors, bedrooms above, servants' quarters below. You have been inside some of these other houses on errands or to borrow things from other servants. They're all essentially the same. The furniture might differ, the wallpaper might be a different pattern, but the underlying structure is identical. Front and back, upstairs and downstairs, family and servants, visible and invisible. Sometimes you see the servants from other houses, a brief glimpse of a housemaid scrubbing the front steps in the early morning, a cook emerging from a basement entrance to argue with a delivery man, a lady's maid walking beside her mistress carrying a shawl and a reticule. You nod to each other if you happen to make eye contact, a brief acknowledgement of shared experience. But you do not speak. There is no time, and besides, you are not really supposed to linger in view of the street. Your place is inside, out of sight. You finish the windows and move on to the fireplace. The grate needs to be cleaned of yesterday's ashes, which you scoop carefully into your ash bucket, trying not to create dust. Then you clean the iron grate itself with black lead polish, applying it with a brush and then buffing it with a cloth until the iron has a soft sheen. This polish gets all over your hands, leaving them grey and gritty, and you will need to scrub them thoroughly later in the scullery to get them clean again. The brass fender and fire tools, poker, tongs, small shovel, must be polished separately with different polish. Brass polish smells sharp and chemical, and it requires vigorous rubbing to bring out the bright shine that the family expects. You work each piece methodically, the fender first, with its curved edges and decorative details, then each tool paying special attention to the handles, where hands touch them, and where tarnish tends to accumulate fastest. By the time you finish, nearly 2 hours have passed and the drawing room is perfect. The carpet shows the neat diagonal lines of fresh sweeping. The furniture gleams with polish. The windows sparkle. The fireplace is clean and ready to be lit again this evening. And most importantly, there is no trace of you, no smudge, no fingerprint, no lingering smell of cleaning products, no evidence that anyone has been in this room except the orderliness itself. You gather your cleaning supplies, your bucket and brushes and cloths and bottles of polish, placing them all carefully in your cleaning box. You take one last look around the room, checking for anything you might have missed. Then you slip out through the servant's door, pulling it closed behind you, and descend the back stairs to the basement. Mrs. Turner is preparing luncheon when you return to the kitchen. Luncheon is usually lighter than dinner, perhaps cold meat left from yesterday's dinner, or soup, or a light main dish like chicken fricassee. Today she's making soup, a rich beef broth with vegetables, and the kitchen smells of onions and carrots and beef bones simmering on the range. You wash your hands thoroughly at the scullery sink, scrubbing away the black lead polish and the brass polish and the general grime of cleaning work, then dry them on a rough towel. Your hands are rough and red from constant washing and from work, the nails cut short and practical, the skin dry and sometimes cracked despite the lanolin salve you rub into them at night. There is no rest, though. You eat your own luncheon standing at the kitchen table, bread and cheese taken quickly because there is always more work waiting. Then it is up the back stairs again, this time to the bedrooms, which must be attended while the family is downstairs having their luncheon. The master and mistress's bedroom is on the first floor at the front of the house. It is the largest bedroom, with space for a large bed with a carved wooden headboard, 2 wardrobes, a dressing table for the mistress, and several chairs. The windows face the street and the morning light has been coming in all morning, warming the room slightly. You begin with the bed. The sheets were changed 2 days ago, so today you do not need to do a complete change. Just straighten everything and smooth out wrinkles. You strip back the heavy quilt and blankets, fold them neatly, and set them aside. Then you smooth the top sheet, checking for any spots or marks that would require it to be changed early. Finding none, you pull the sheet tight and tuck it in firmly at the foot and sides. Using the hospital corner technique that Mrs. Davison taught you, fold the sheet at the corner, tuck it under, fold again, tuck the rest. When done properly, the sheet is taut and smooth without any wrinkles. You replace the blankets, smooth the quilt on top and plump the pillows, setting them just so against the headboard. The bed now looks as if no one has ever slept in it, which of course they have just last night, but your job is to restore it to pristine condition every morning. Next, you empty and clean the chamber pot which sits in a cabinet beside the bed. Modern houses like this one have water closets, but chamber pots are still used at night because no one wants to navigate stairs in the darkness. You carry the pot carefully down to the basement, empty it into the privy, rinse it thoroughly with cold water, and dry it before bringing it back upstairs. This is unpleasant work, but you have grown used to it. It is simply one more task in the long list of tasks that constitute your day. The room's surfaces need dusting. The dressing table, the wardrobes, the windowsills, the picture frames on the walls. You work quickly but thoroughly, your cloth moving in smooth strokes, lifting objects to dust underneath them, replacing them exactly where they were. The mistress is particular about her things, and she will notice if anything is out of place. The water jug on the washstand needs refilling. You carry it downstairs to the kitchen, where a large kettle of hot water sits warming on the back of the range specifically for this purpose. You fill the jug with hot water, not boiling, but hot enough that steam rises from the surface, and carry it carefully back upstairs. Hot water is a luxury, something the family takes for granted but which requires significant labour to provide. Someone must heat water on the range, someone must carry it upstairs in heavy jugs, multiple times per day for multiple rooms. You place the hot water jug back in its ceramic basin on the washstand, next to the bar of fine soap that the mistress uses, the smell of roses emanating from it even though it is not currently being used. The floor needs sweeping, so you use a hand brush and dustpan to collect any dust or small debris. Then you go over it with a damp cloth, working on your knees, paying special attention to the corners and the areas under furniture where dust accumulates. By the time you finish this room, another 45 minutes have passed, and there are 3 more bedrooms to attend to before you can move on to other tasks. The guest room, currently unoccupied but maintained as if guests might arrive at any moment. The children's rooms, which tend to be messier and require more work to restore to order. Each room has its own requirements, its own character, its own list of tasks that must be completed. The work is repetitive, yes, the same tasks every day, in the same rooms, according to the same schedule. But there is also a kind of rhythm to it, a meditation almost, if you let your mind settle into the movement of your hands. Polish and buff, sweep and dust, straighten and smooth. Your body knows these motions now, performs them almost automatically, leaving your mind free to wander. Sometimes you think about your family back in the village. Your mother, who worked as a laundress before her hands became too damaged by the harsh soap and constant cold water. Your father, who worked as a labourer on the large estate near the village, doing whatever seasonal work was available. Your younger siblings, still at home, still children. You send most of your wages back to them. You keep only enough for your own small needs and save a little for the future. and you know that your income makes a real difference to your family's survival. This is why you are here, why you accepted this position, why you tolerate the long hours and the invisibility and the strict rules and the social subordination. Because your labour here translates into food and shelter for your family. Because domestic service, despite its difficulties, is better than the factory work or the agricultural work that would otherwise be your options. And besides, there is something to be said for working in a well-run household. Mrs. Davison is strict, yes, but she's also fair. The family is not cruel. They are simply indifferent, which is perhaps worse in some ways, but also easier to bear. You have heard stories from other servants about households where the mistress is tyrannical, or where the master has inappropriate expectations of the female servants. Those situations sound genuinely terrible. By comparison, your situation here is tolerable. Difficult, exhausting, sometimes degrading, but tolerable. You finish the children's rooms and make your way back down the back stairs, your cleaning box in hand, your knees aching from kneeling on hard floors, your arms tired from scrubbing and polishing. It is mid-afternoon now. There will be tea soon for the family, which means more work in the kitchen, more dishes to wash afterward. Then preparations for dinner, which is served at 7 o'clock and requires significant effort from everyone in the household. But first, for just a few minutes, you sit at the kitchen table and rest. Mrs. Turner is still working at the range, stirring something in a large pot, but she does not begrudge you this brief rest. She knows how tiring the work is. You pour yourself a cup of tea from the pot that sits on the back of the range, kept warm all day for the servants' use. The tea is strong and dark, with just a little milk and sugar to take the edge off the bitterness. You cradle the cup in your hands, feeling the warmth seep into your cold fingers, and for these few minutes, you allow yourself to simply sit, to not move, to not think about the next task waiting to be done. This is a small moment of peace in the long day. You have learned to value these moments, to sink into them fully when they occur, because they are rare and brief and necessary. Without these moments, the work would be unbearable. With them, it is merely hard. You drink your tea, you rest, and then, because the work never stops, you stand up and return to it. The afternoon slides into evening, and the pace of work in the basement intensifies as dinner approaches. Dinner is the most elaborate meal of the day, the one that requires the most preparation and coordination. Tonight, there are no guests. It is just the family, but that does not mean dinner can be simple. Standards must be maintained. Mrs. Turner is in command of the kitchen now, moving between the range and the work table with quick efficiency, her face flushed from the heat and the exertion. You are assisting her, doing whatever tasks she assigns. Right now, you are peeling potatoes at the scullery sink, your hands moving automatically through the familiar motion. Grasp potato, position knife, pare away the skin in long strips, drop the peeled potato in the basin of cold water, reach for the next one. There is a rhythm to this work that you find almost soothing. The rasp of the knife against the potato, the cool water on your hands, the growing pile of pale, peeled potatoes, and the growing pile of brown peelings that will be saved for the household pig, because nothing is wasted in a well-run kitchen. You can do this work without thinking, which leaves your mind free to listen to the sounds of the kitchen around you. Mrs. Turner is making a roast beef tonight, with Yorkshire pudding and roasted potatoes and boiled vegetables. The beef is already in the oven, filling the kitchen with the rich smell of roasting meat. The Yorkshire pudding batter has been mixed and is resting on the table, waiting to be poured into the hot fat when the time comes. The vegetables, carrots, turnips, cabbage, are being prepared in stages, some by you, some by Mary the scullery maid, some by Mrs. Turner herself. Thomas comes into the kitchen carrying a bottle of wine from the cellar, which he will open and allow to breathe before serving it with dinner. He exchanges a few words with Mrs. Turner about the timing, when the family is likely to sit down, how long the beef needs to rest before carving, when the vegetables should be finished. This coordination is essential. Everything must be ready at the same moment, and everything must be at the right temperature. You finish the potatoes and bring them to Mrs. Turner, who inspects them briefly. She's checking to make sure you have removed all the eyes and any bad spots, then nods and instructs you to put them in the pot to boil. You do so, adding salt to the water, then set the pot on the range to heat. "Watch the time," Mrs. Turner says, not looking up from the carrots she's slicing. 20 minutes once it comes to a boil, no more. I want them soft but not mushy." "Yes, Mrs. Turner." Time is measured differently in the kitchen than in the family's rooms upstairs. Upstairs, time is measured by the ornate clock on the mantelpiece, by the social obligations that structure the day: morning calls, tea time, dinner hour. Down here, time is measured by cooking processes: how long the beef has been in the oven, how long until the potatoes are done, when the Yorkshire pudding batter needs to go in, when the vegetables need to come off the heat. You do not have a watch, you cannot afford one. But you have learned to estimate time by other means, by how much the light has faded outside, by the sounds of activity in the house above, by the feel of things cooking, and when precision is required, Mrs. Turner keeps a small kitchen timer that she winds and sets, its mechanical ticking a steady heartbeat in the busy kitchen. The kitchen is hot now. The range is at full heat, with the beef roasting and the potatoes boiling and other pots simmering. The air is thick and warm and smells of roasting meat and boiling vegetables and the yeasty smell of Yorkshire pudding batter. Mrs. Turner is sweating, and so are you, despite the cold November evening outside. Working in the kitchen is hot work, especially on days when a substantial dinner is being prepared. At 6:30, Mrs. Turner begins the final stages of dinner preparation. She drains some of the hot beef fat from the roasting pan and pours it into the Yorkshire pudding tin, then slides the tin into the hot oven. The fat sizzles and smokes, and within moments the batter is poured on top where it will rise and crisp in the intense heat. Yorkshire pudding is deceptively simple: flour, eggs, milk, salt. But it requires perfect timing and the right heat to achieve the light, crispy result that the family expects. You drain the potatoes, which have cooked to the right tenderness, and place them in a serving dish. Mrs. Turner adds a pat of butter and a sprinkle of parsley. Presentation matters, even for potatoes, and covers the dish to keep them warm. The other vegetables are finished and plated. The gravy, made from the beef drippings and beef stock, is heating gently on the range, its rich brown colour and savoury smell promising to tie all the elements of the meal together. At exactly 7 o'clock, Thomas appears in the kitchen doorway ready to carry the meal upstairs. Mrs. Turner has been monitoring the clock carefully and everything is ready. The beef rested and carved, the Yorkshire puddings golden and puffed, the vegetables hot, the gravy smooth and rich. Thomas loads the serving dishes onto a large tray, a complex arrangement that he has done so many times he could probably do it with his eyes closed. The beef platter in the centre, the Yorkshire puddings around it, the vegetables in their dishes, the gravy boat, the warm plates that the family will serve themselves from. The whole tray must weigh 40 pounds easily, but Thomas lifts it with apparent ease. Years of practice have built the strength required, and heads for the back stairs. This is the moment when the kitchen's work becomes visible to the family, though the kitchen itself remains invisible. In a few minutes they will be sitting in the dining room, the table set with clean linens and polished silver, the gaslight casting a warm glow over everything. The food will appear before them, carried by Thomas, who will serve them silently and efficiently, before withdrawing to stand by the sideboard, ready to refill wine glasses or fetch something if needed, but otherwise unobtrusive. They will eat the dinner you helped prepare. They will compliment Mrs. Turner's cooking, though they will not say this to her. They will say it to each other, or perhaps to the mistress, who will later convey the compliment to the kitchen. They will finish the meal satisfied, comfortable, warm, their evening proceeding according to the comfortable routine they expect. And down here in the kitchen, you will wait. Wait for the dishes to come back down so they can be washed. Wait for Mrs. Turner to finish the final cleaning tasks. Wait for your own dinner, which you will eat after the family has been served, a simpler version of what they are eating upstairs. The waiting is its own kind of work. You cannot fully relax because there might be a summons from upstairs, a request for more gravy, or for a particular wine, or for something that was forgotten. You must be ready to respond immediately if needed. But you also cannot remain in a state of high alert, because you will exhaust yourself. So you find a middle state, a kind of restful readiness, where you are available but not tense. You sit at the kitchen table with Mary, the scullery maid, and you talk quietly about small things. She's younger than you, perhaps 15, and she misses her home in the country. You tell her about your own village, your own family, trying to offer comfort. She asks if it gets easier, this work, this life, and you tell her yes, which is partly true. The work itself does not get easier. Tired muscles are tired muscles. But you get better at managing it, at finding small moments of rest, at not letting the exhaustion overwhelm you. Mrs. Turner is at the range, already beginning to prepare tomorrow's meals. A good cook is always thinking ahead, always planning, always using time efficiently. She's putting together a stock from the beef bones, which will simmer overnight on the back of the range and provide the base for tomorrow's soup. She's checking the larder to see what needs to be used before it spoils. She's making mental calculations about what to buy at tomorrow's market. Thomas returns with the first round of empty dishes. The family has finished the first course, and now he is taking up the pudding, a steamed fruit pudding with custard sauce, which Mrs. Turner prepared this morning and has been keeping warm. He loads his tray with the pudding and the custard and fresh plates, then disappears back up the stairs. You and Mary begin washing the dishes he's brought down. The scullery sink is filled with hot water heated on the range, and you work together with an efficiency born of long practice. She washes, scrubbing each plate and serving dish and pot with a stiff brush and strong soap. You rinse each item in a second basin of clean hot water, then dry it with a rough towel and stack it on the table to be put away later. The water is hot enough to make your hands ache. The soap is harsh, designed for cutting through grease, and it dries your skin. But this work must be done thoroughly. Any trace of grease or food left on a dish is a mark against the household standards. Mrs. Davison inspects the washed dishes randomly, and if she finds one that is not perfectly clean, she will make her displeasure known. More dishes come down as the family finishes their dinner. Pudding plates, coffee cups, the silver serving dishes that held the vegetables. Each item must be washed, rinsed, dried, inspected, and put away. The work takes nearly an hour, by which time your hands are red and wrinkled from the hot water, and your back aches from bending over the sink. Finally, Mrs. Turner declares that you and Mary can eat your own dinner. She dishes out portions of the beef and vegetables, not the best cuts, those went upstairs, but perfectly good meat nonetheless. And you sit at the kitchen table and eat. After hours of smelling the food as it cooked, the actual eating feels almost anticlimactic. You're hungry, yes, and the food tastes good, but you're also too tired to fully appreciate it. You eat efficiently, fueling your body for the work that still remains. Because even now, at 9 o'clock in the evening, the day is not finished. After you eat, there are still tasks to be completed. The kitchen must be cleaned and readied for tomorrow. The range must be banked for the night. The remaining dishes must be washed and put away. The floor must be swept. Mrs. Turner must check her stores one final time and make her list for tomorrow's market shopping. You work alongside Mary and Mrs. Turner, each of you doing your part in the familiar routine. The kitchen gradually returns to order, surfaces wiped clean, pots and pans scrubbed and hung on their hooks, the floor swept, the fires banked. By 10 o'clock you are climbing the back stairs to your attic room, your legs heavy with exhaustion. The stairs seem steeper at night, or perhaps you're simply more aware of them after a full day's work. You count them as you climb. 14 steps to the ground floor landing, 14 more to the first floor, 14 to the second, 14 to the third, 14 more to the attic. 70 steps in total, and you climb them multiple times every day. Your room is at the end of the attic corridor, a small space with a sloped ceiling and a skylight that currently shows nothing but darkness. You share this room with Annie, the upper housemaid, and another girl whose name is Jane and who works as a parlour maid. There are 3 narrow beds in here, 3 small chests for personal belongings, 3 hooks on the wall for hanging clothes. That is all. The room is cold, there is no fireplace up here, and heat from below does not rise this far, and you can see your breath in the air. You light the stub of candle on your chest. You're allowed 1 candle per week, and you must make it last by using it as little as possible, and undress quickly in the cold. Your uniform goes on the hook, ready to be worn again tomorrow. You put on your nightgown, which is made of rough flannel and provides some warmth against the cold. You wash your face and hands in the basin of cold water on the washstand, and you rub a little lanolin salve into your work-roughened hands. Then you climb into bed, pulling the thin blanket and the 1 threadbare quilt over yourself. The bed is not comfortable, the mattress is lumpy and the pillow is flat, but you're so tired that comfort hardly matters. You blow out the candle to save what little remains, and in the sudden darkness, you lie still and feel your body begin to relax. Tomorrow you will wake at 5:30 and do it all again. light the range, clean the rooms, prepare the meals, wash the dishes, climb the back stairs, remain invisible. This is your life, day after day, week after week, month after month. But tonight, in this moment before sleep takes you, you allow yourself to think about other things. About your family, whom you miss but who are surviving because of your wages. About the possibility of saving enough money to have a small cushion against emergency. About the future, which is uncertain, but which might hold opportunities you cannot yet imagine. You are invisible, yes. You are a servant at the bottom of the social hierarchy, doing work that few people acknowledge or value. But you're also surviving. You're also learning skills. You're also stronger than you thought you could be. And with that thought, you sleep. Sunday is different. Sunday is the one day of the week when the rigid schedule loosens slightly, when there is a possibility of rest, when the relentless machinery of the household slows just enough to breathe. You still wake early, 5:30, the same as every other day, because the range must still be lit and the household must still be fed. But Sunday breakfast is lighter, simpler, because the family will be going to church and will not linger over their meal. And after breakfast, after the morning tasks are completed, you will have a few hours of freedom. Not all servants get Sunday afternoon off. Thomas must accompany the family to church, standing at the back of the family pew in his livery, available if needed, but mostly ornamental. Mrs. Turner must prepare Sunday dinner, which is traditionally the most substantial meal of the week. But the housemaids rotate, and this Sunday is your Sunday off, which means that from noon until 9 in the evening, your time is your own. This is a luxury so profound that it almost feels unreal. 9 hours when you do not have to be anywhere, do not have to do anything, are not subject to Mrs. Davison's supervision or the family's needs. 9 hours that belong to you. You dress carefully in your one good dress, not your uniform, but a plain dark dress that you bought with your own money and keep for wearing on your time off. It is not fashionable, but it is respectable, and it marks you as a person rather than a servant. You pin your hat on carefully, angling it just so, and pull on your coat, which is worn but clean. Then you walk out the servants' entrance, up the basement steps and into the street. The sensation of walking out the front of the house, into the public street, is always slightly disorienting. You spend your days inside, moving through the house's internal passages, and when you do go outside, it is usually on errands, carrying things, moving with purpose. But today you are simply walking, a person on the street like any other person, with no task to complete and nowhere you must be. The November air is cold and damp, typical of London at this time of year. The skies are flat grey, and there is a quality to the light that suggests it might rain later. But you do not mind. After the close heat of the kitchen and the dim basement passages, even cold damp air feels fresh and clean. You walk toward the park, which is about half a mile from the house. The streets are quieter on Sunday mornings, with fewer carts and carriages and pedestrians. The shops are closed, their windows shuttered. The city itself seems to be observing the Sabbath, though you know from experience that this Sunday quiet is mostly an illusion. The poor neighbourhoods are as busy as ever, because the poor cannot afford to rest. But here, in this respectable area, the appearance of rest is maintained. The park is one of your favourite places. It is not a large park, nothing like Hyde Park or Regent's Park, which you have visited only once or twice in all your time in London. But it is a pleasant green space with paths and benches and a small pond where ducks congregate. On Sunday afternoons, the park fills with people, families with children, couples walking together, servants on their time off. You find a bench that is not too damp and sit, watching the park life unfold around you. A little girl in a blue coat is feeding bread to the ducks, supervised by an older woman who is probably her grandmother. A group of young men are walking together, talking animatedly about something you cannot hear. An elderly couple sits on another bench, close together, not speaking but comfortable in each other's silence. This is one of the things you have learned to value in your time off, simply sitting and watching other people live their lives. In the house, you are always working, always moving, always focused on tasks that must be completed. Here, you can just be. You do not have to be invisible. You do not have to be useful. You can simply exist in this moment, a person sitting on a bench on a grey November afternoon. You have brought a letter from home with you, which arrived 3 days ago, but which you have not yet had time to read properly. You pull it from your coat pocket now, and unfold it carefully. The paper is cheap, and the handwriting is your mother's, large and slightly uneven, formed by someone who learned to write late in life and never became completely comfortable with it. The letter contains news from home. Your father has found steady work on the estate, which is good because steady work is rare. Your younger brother has recovered from the chest cold that was worrying everyone. Your sister is learning to sew and might be able to get work as a dressmaker's apprentice, which would be a good position for her. Your mother thanks you for the money you sent and says it made all the difference in getting through the month. Reading this letter, you feel a complicated mixture of emotions. Homesickness, certainly. You miss your family, miss the village, miss the simplicity of that life before you came to London, but also satisfaction, because your work here is serving a purpose. Your labour, your invisibility, your exhaustion, these are translated into your family's survival, into your brother's recovery, into your sister's opportunities. You refold the letter carefully and put it back in your pocket. You will write a reply tonight before bed, sitting in your cold attic room by candlelight, telling your mother about your life here, though you will edit carefully, omitting the hardest parts because you do not want her to worry. A woman sits down on the other end of your bench and you glance at her briefly. She's wearing a uniform similar to yours, marking her as a servant, and she looks tired in the way you have come to recognise, the kind of tiredness that comes from sustained hard work. She nods to you, and you nod back, a silent acknowledgement of shared experience. "Lovely afternoon," she says, though it is not particularly lovely, grey and cold and damp, but you understand what she means. Lovely because it is time off. Lovely because you're sitting down. Lovely because for these few hours you do not have to carry coal, or scrub floors, or wash dishes. It is, you agree. You do not exchange names or details. That is not how these brief Sunday afternoon encounters work. You're simply two servants, both enjoying a few hours of freedom, both understanding without needing to explain what the other's life is like. This understanding is its own form of connection, more meaningful in some ways than deeper friendships, because it requires no explanation, no performance, no effort. You sit in companionable silence watching the park and something in you relaxes. This is enough. This bench, this moment, this brief respite from invisibility. This is enough to sustain you for another week of work. After a while, the woman stands and nods to you again, then walks away. You remain on the bench a while longer, letting the cold seep into you, watching the light begin to fade as afternoon shifts toward evening. You know you should probably start walking back. You need to be back at the house by 9 o'clock, and it will take time to walk, but you want to hold on to this freedom as long as possible. Finally, reluctantly, you stand and begin the walk back. The streets are busier now as people return from their Sunday activities. You pass other servants, other working people, all making their way back to the houses and shops and workplaces that employ them. Monday morning is coming, and with it the return to routine. When you reach the house, you go around to the servants' entrance and descend the familiar stone steps to the basement door. The smell of Sunday dinner cooking greets you as you enter. Roast lamb by the smell of it, with mint sauce and roasted vegetables. Mrs. Turner is at the range, her face flushed from the heat, and she nods to you as you hang up your coat and hat. "Good afternoon," she asks. "Yes, thank you." This is all that needs to be said. She understands. You all understand. These Sunday afternoons are precious because they are rare, because they are a glimpse of a different kind of life, a life where your time is your own. But now Sunday afternoon is over, and you're back in the house, back in your uniform, back in your place. Tomorrow the full schedule will resume. 5:30 wake up, light the range, clean the rooms, wash the dishes, climb the back stairs, remain invisible, day after day, week after week. And you will do it, because this is the work available to you, because your family depends on your wages, because you have developed a kind of pride in doing this work well, because you have no other real choice. But for a few hours today you sat on a bench in a park and belonged to yourself. You read a letter from home, you watched ducks swimming in a pond, you were visible, present, acknowledged as a person. And that for now is enough to keep you going. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us keep making more content. See you in the next one. Did your own family history include domestic service? Is there a story passed down about a grandmother or great-grandmother who worked in service? I would genuinely love to hear it in the comments.